but it's a hike that I walked hundreds of times, trying this level over and over again, only making it to the Boomerang Bros on the slightest of occasions. And at that point, I was so nervous, it was only a matter of moments before I fell into the void and had to give it another go. And no, it definitely didn't help that the screen actually turns completely white, removing any reference you have, except for the slightest glimmer in the distance of a power star. But I tried this, over and over, and, well, hundreds of times over. But I was never able to get it.
You know what? No, I've had enough. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Games Must Go On, a series where the Geneva Convention is my bucket list. Today I'm not asking a question, today I'm asking for revenge. That's because over the last year or two, I've been looking at several Mario games with the pacifist challenge in mind, trying to make Mario a better person on the inside. But do I get any respect? No. The enemies still treat me like trash and still have the audacity to attack me. And you know what? I've had it. I've tried my best to be nice, and that hasn't worked. So that's why today I'm going back to where it all began in Super Mario 3D World and killing every single enemy. Let's get right into this. Now I could hop into the run with a half-baked set of rules, but I feel like I should go into them. So first of all, what is an enemy? Well, in my rule set I'm going to say an enemy is something that can deal damage to the player, but the player can deal damage to, and that actually exists. And yes, that's crucial to point out because, well, you'll see later. The next question is, what does defeating every enemy actually entail? And you might think it's where every enemy has to die, but that's actually incorrect. Remember, this isn't Mario 3D World where every enemy spontaneously combusts. This is a revenge mission. So, to make it a little more personal, I'm going to require that I defeat every enemy with either a melee attack or a projectile. No red POWs, screen wipes, or falling off screen. This is going to be personal and I'm going to take care of business. However, there are a couple of other enemy types that I should mention. The first of these types are the infinitely respawning enemies. Think of something like a Bullet Bill, for instance. Obviously, I can't stand in front of a Bullet Bill spawner for the entire game. That's why instead I'm going to require that I either kill a single instance of the enemy or destroy the enemy's spawner. And that might sound a little weird until you realize that a boomerang thrown by a Boomerang Bro technically is its own enemy. And with this rule in place, just killing the Boomerang Bro will suffice. The last enemy types for this run are the multi-state enemies. Take something like a Boulder or a Hop Chop for instance. Technically we can kill them by attacking them, but they don't stay dead for long. As such, what is defined as killing them? Well, for the purpose of this run, I'm going to define their defeat as killing them and putting them in their dead state at least once. Even if they regen after that, we already technically killed them. And this even goes for if they have a more permanent version of death, like throwing them off a ledge. That's because, again, we're trying to make this personal, so throwing them off the ledge isn't even a direct way that I can kill them. But that being said, it's about time I get into the objective for this run. Now while I could take the easy way out and go for any percent, you already know I'm going for 100%, but not even that, as I'm actually going for 100% in a single go, which basically means I have to collect every green star, every stamp, and kill every enemy in a single run of a level, so that's going to make some levels especially difficult. Last but not least, Captain Toad is going to be exempt from these rules, mostly because he can't really attack in this game. Now I was able to abuse multiplayer in the Switch version, but he still can't kill things like Rammerheads and Thwomps, mostly because he doesn't have any power-ups, and as such, he's not really able to kill every enemy in his stages. But because it's not really in the main game, I'm not going to focus on it that much. However, don't worry if you like Captain Toad, because he'll be getting his own genocide mission in his own game later. But with that, it's about time that I stop stalling and instead ask the question, can you beat Super Mario 3D World while killing every single enemy? We start to run off in Super Bell Hill, and because you physically can't make Super Bell Hill a challenge without literally hacking the game, it's obviously pretty easy. But then we get into 1-2 and I have to ask, what the heck is a Koopa Troopa? Now obviously we can jump on its head to knock the Koopa out of its shell, but then is the beached Koopa an enemy? Is the Koopa shell an enemy? Do I have to kill that? Do I not have to kill either because it's sort of like a multi-state enemy? Well, my answer is perhaps. But I don't care about the answer because there's a new solution in town and it's called the Invincibility Leaf. Now normally I try to refrain from using this cheat leaf, however in this challenge it's an absolute necessity, mostly because a lot of enemies can only be killed with the cheat leaf. Take things like splorches and the lava bubbles. They can only die from invincibility, as well as it tidies up a lot of questions like with the Koopa Troopas. As such, I will be using it for a lot of a run, but don't worry if you like difficulty because it's not going to be able to solve all of my problems. Speaking of situations where the suit doesn't help, welcome everyone to Plessie's Plunging Falls, and this place is pretty problematic. The obvious problem in this level are the Splounders, as we should have to kill every last one of them, and considering the split paths in this level, it doesn't look very promising. Until you realize one little fact, that being the Splounders aren't enemies. At this point, I can already hear you clacking away in the comment section telling me why I'm wrong and why a Splounder is in fact an enemy. I mean, in Bowser's Fury, you can run into it and it'll deal damage to you. In this game, if you are on Plessie and you run into it, you'll obviously defeat it, and it obviously exists, so obviously it's an enemy. Until you realize that I said in Bowser's Fury, it does damage to you. Here, on the other hand, you can never interact with a Splounder without being on Plessie. So, will you still take damage from it while not on Plessie? Well, it turns out that the modding community had the exact same question, so they moved a Splounder into an actual play area, and surprise surprise, they can be taken out quite a few different ways, including things like power-ups, with other projectiles, and of course, by running directly into it. Which means there isn't actually a way to take damage from a regular Splounder in Mario 3D World, which also means these guys aren't enemies. But that doesn't change my previous statement. There still is a really big problem in these plunging falls. Surprisingly, the problem isn't even enemy related here. It's the fact that we have to get this green star right here and this stamp on the same attempt. Remember, we're trying to get 100% in the same run. And because these objects are on separate split paths, that's kind of a problem. Or at least it would be a problem for a single person. But as it turns out, the speedrun community actually discovered that with 2 people you can actually do a super bounce with Plessie, and this bounce is actually enough to get over this wall. And with perfect controlling you can actually make your way over to the stamp after grabbing this green star. Which means it technically is possible, but now I actually have to do it. And this trick is actually pretty tough as I have to micromanage 2 controllers at once. But it's definitely doable, and after climbing up the flagpole we can say that Plessie's Plunging Falls is complete. The only thing left to mention is that in 1-Castle we're actually required to use 3 items at once. That being, we need a golden Tanuki leaf to destroy these swamps, we need a cat suit to get up here, and we need a fire flower in order to destroy Bowser's sweet ride. But other than that, that wraps up World 1 and we're able to head off to World 2. Which is actually pretty easy. Well, at least until we reach 2-Tank. Bowser's Bullet Bill Brigade bustles with blistering hot bullet bills, which obviously makes it pretty difficult on its own, and even with a white Tanuki suit, hitting everything was actually quite difficult because of the auto-scroll. But really the huge problem in this level are the cannon boxes. This box is actually somewhat of a problem because the bullets it shoots out actually can hurt other players, meaning you're technically shooting out enemies. So I essentially have to defeat one of my own bullets. And instead of just shooting it into a wall or something, I decided the only way to do it was to take out Luigi and, well, take out Luigi. But with that, World 2 is pretty easy. Next up is World 3, which almost immediately throws us into a pretty shifty Boo Mansion. Which is impossible. I'm serious. Due to these Boos outside of these windows, since we can't reach them and they don't move, we literally can't kill them. And obviously, Boos are enemies. But are these Boos really Boos? I mean, all common sense would say that they were, but consider what I just said. These Boos don't move. But did you also notice that they don't cover their face when they're looked at? You know, the entire point of having a boo? Or how about the fact that they don't even spawn in like a regular boo, instead always being permanently loaded? With so many small details removed, it really begs the question, were these boos deconstructed from the original with just the property of looking at the player left, or were they built up from scratch? And this answer will actually determine whether this level is possible or not. Let me take you on a little conspiracy. Let's say you were a programmer at Nintendo, and the year is 2011. You just released Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS, and you were just assigned to your next project, Super Mario 3D World for the next hit system, the Wii U. And at one of the board meetings, you hear that this upcoming game will be including boos, an enemy that is a Mario staple. Now, throughout the next couple of days, the art team designs this ghostly ghoul before it is handed over to you to program. So you go ahead and program it to do all the things it needs to do, and voila, you made a working enemy. But then the next meeting comes around, and you are told that the level design needs a little more decoration. Maybe a boo that looks at the player through the window. So you get to work, but then you're faced with a dilemma. How do you implement this decoration? Now you could just redesign your existing script for boos to have a version that disables moving, but at this point your code looks so much like spaghetti that even Luigi would be proud. That's why instead you take an empty object and you get a little creative. You go ahead and put the boo model on top of this object, and then create a simple rotation script to have it follow the player. And what do you know? No one would ever know. Until now. You see, there's a reason I believe in this conspiracy, and it's thanks again to the modding team. The reason I believe in this theory is because in the game's actual files, there are two versions of a large boo. There are the Teresa Big, which are your standard big boos, and then there are Teresa Conveyor Teresa Big, which are these weird ones outside. But the name change isn't the only difference. This is what a regular Teresa Big looks like. Pretty normal, right? Well, this is what a Teresa Conveyor Teresa Big looks like. Don't see it? Well, that's because it's this empty cube right here. Something just to mark its position. But who cares? All this talk begs the question, so what? Who cares if this boo was built from scratch or is missing a few components? Well, the reason is because one component that was never added is a collider. Which means even if we could touch the boos, like what the modding community did by moving one inside of a mansion, it wouldn't matter, because the boo can't be interacted with, meaning it is not an enemy. And Shifty Boo Mansion can in fact be cleared. That was actually the only thing to mention in World 3, so we can jump right into World 4. Now, the first level here is Ant Trooper Hill, and while nothing here is that difficult, I did want to mention that the large Ant Troopers aren't actually enemies due to the fact that they can't be killed, even with invincibility, which of course breaks one of the first rules of something being an enemy. Next up though is 4-2, which is also pretty easy, well, except for the mystery box for the first green star. That does require some precise bounces to make sure we destroy all the piranha creepers before we actually collect a green star. Our next fun section comes from Big Bounce Byway, which comes from this almighty circle of para-bitty-buds that we have to fight on this moving trampoline. Now, while this might seem intimidating, I'll be completely honest, destroying all the bugs here wasn't actually that difficult, so we're actually able to move right on to the castle. This castle is actually pretty tricky, and that's thanks to these potaboos that spawn whenever you go for this pipe. Now we can jump across the pit after leaving the pipe in order to hit some of these potaboos with invincibility, but every time we jump we have to sacrifice a suit, and unfortunately we don't have enough suits for the job. Now that doesn't mean that this section is impossible though, actually quite the contrary, as there's two solutions that could be used. The first is to switch over to the deluxe version on the Switch and to use the Cat Mario amiibo to get invincibility from the white bell. Now this method is relatively impractical to say the least, as I would need to buy a Cat Mario amiibo for each attempt I would like to take to kill potaboos. Now while this method would technically work, There's definitely a much better way, and that's to never have the Potaboos exist in the first place. Because remember, an enemy is only an enemy if it exists. This is where it's important. Now, for actually preventing these enemies' existence, we can just skip the clear pipe, which will ignore the enemy's spawn trigger. But is this cheating? I mean, you might think so. But remember, there always is that other way. It's just that I really don't want to shell out hundreds of dollars on cat statues, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump over. But with that, World 4 is over, and let's head over to World 5. There's only one real problematic level in World 5, that being Searchlight Sneak. Now this level is actually pretty difficult, simply because we have to defeat each of the bullet bills here at least once, which becomes pretty problematic because there are 44 spawners. Now that normally wouldn't be too bad, but in this level, instead of the bullet bills being pointed at me, they're instead pointed at the ground that I walk on, which means in order to hit them, I essentially have to sit at the edges of these breakable platforms and hope that I hit them all. And that's not even mentioning the fact that in the mystery box I have to kill 3 of them, and a single mistake can result in entire failure. In the end, I still was able to beat this level with a small chunk of time to spare, but this level definitely wasn't that easy. But with that, I was able to move on to World 6. Welcome to World 6, also known as the world that doesn't have anything interesting in it. Seriously, the only 2 things to really mention are that sniping these bullets at the bullet bill base are easier to hit when using the boomerang suit, and I guess 6-tank is kinda tricky, but besides that, World 6 is easy, and we can move right on to the next easy world, that being World 7, and by next easy world, I mean absolute pain. But Waluigi, how can World 7 be difficult? You're probably wondering, and to answer your question, let me introduce you to Fort Fire Bros. Now, from the name, you would probably think that the Fire Bros here are problematic, but they're actually the least important part of the stage as we have invincibility. No, the real problem here are the spicy bubbles of joy, the lava bubbles, as these pyrokinetic problem producers are found in multiple spots in the stage as decoration. But alas, as decoration that can be, and as such must be killed. That being said though, let's hop right into the level. Right at the beginning you may notice I have 4 players out. This is so I can get 4 gold Tanuki leaves from the block. And I need 4 leaves as I'm going to be using my favorite strategy to kill the lava bubbles. That's right, sacrifice! Now, these first couple of lava bubbles are actually close enough to the ground to be destroyed without plunging into the sonic soup, but we will have to lose our first leaf in order to get to the third lava bubble out here. And not long after, we again enjoy the refreshing taste of cool blue Gatorade to get this lava bubble out here. Now, the good news is we don't have to lose our leaf again for a while. The bad news is next up are several block steppers walking continuously around very explosive red pals that we aren't allowed to use. But worst of all, on all sides, these stupid steppers are surrounded by lava, meaning it is luck whether they fall in or not, because once a single block stepper is unalived, the rest jump back and run in random directions, including off obvious cliffs. And can I just say, everyone makes fun of Green Koopas for being dumb and walking off cliffs, but these guys, they literally try to belly flop into this blue raspberry slushy. Seriously, they are extraordinarily dumb. Anyway, this section is technically possible with luck, but we aren't even done yet. The next problem is probably worse than the block steppers, and it begins as soon as we go through this pipe. As you can see, 12 more lava bubbles appear just to mock me for my hubris. Now, your first instinct is probably to go ahead and jump back to the pipe and kill the lava bubbles. However, the camera in this section is kinda bad. So bad in fact that it makes Mario 64's camera look functional. And I mean that literally, as if a player is not in their bubble and you jump off screen to try to make your way back, you'll just end up in your own bubble. Thankfully, the solution here is just as simple as remembering that these characters are as disposable as the facts that you can find on Twitter and Facebook, and that we have 1 more spare leaf in reserve. So instead of jumping back from the pipe, we're going to instead just never go through it in the first place, and instead just make a leap of faith all the way to the pipe and sacrifice our last leaf in the process. With that, the next step is obvious. We need to defeat the lava bubbles here while being careful not to fall in the Windex cleaning fluid. From here though, we have one more tight jump. We have to make it up the pipe. Now this is difficult because not only do we have to jump far enough to reach the pipe, but then we have to start 90-degree wall jumping, which isn't always consistent, especially with the other characters that get in your way, which is why I personally recommend removing them by removing their life. Once that's done, the last thing to do is to defeat the lava bubbles up here with the gold tanuki, before defeating the final fire bro and finishing off the level. Well, that was kinda bad, but at least time wasn't an issue in this level. But hey, that ends off World 7, right? Nope! Instead, it's time to jump right into 7-3, Red Hot Run. At first glance, it may look like the only problem in 7-3 are the Goombas in this secret room. But come on, do you really think a bunch of Goombas are going to stop me? No. The real problem is that at the end there are 3 spinning spike pinwheels of fun that must be dismantled by force. This is, of course, a time-consuming process, and in a level with 100 Mario seconds, there really isn't a lot of time to spare. Now there are a couple of strategies to use and abuse though, such as collecting green coins with the gamepad and with Toad at the same time, as well as crouch spinning to maximize my hitbox in order to hit lower spike bars. Either way, this level isn't easy, but with enough attempts I definitely was able to beat it. But we're not completely done yet, as I hate to say it, but we now have an impossible level. The level is 7-A. Boulder Blockade is back, and it is physically impossible right now because we have no way to kill the splorches that spawn since we can't get the white tanuki leaf here. It's a good thing that impossible levels are only a minor inconvenience though, as this level is actually on a split path, and with the easiest boss on the other, we can come back when necessary. But for now, let's go ahead and take down Prince Bully and then crash the castle and finish off World 7. Our first problem in World 8 comes from Plessy's Downhill Dune, and like the first Plessy level, it actually has a split path. Now the first of these paths has the stamp on it, while the other has some Parabiddy buds. Now obviously we need to go down both paths to hit everything, but that's a little hard to do when there's this giant gap between you and the enemies. Well, if I can't come to the enemies, I'll just have to let them come to me, which can actually be done as if we move as slow as possible, we can actually let the enemies just walk to the end of a cloud bridge before jumping on them. And if we're lucky, we'll actually be able to hit all 5. The terrifying Train of Treachery is next, also known as the Bowser Express, and this level is pretty difficult for an obvious reason. At the end of a train, there's a car with Goombas on the inside and Ant-Troopers on the outside, and obviously we have to defeat both. Now the 2 biggest problems here are that as soon as we enter the store, all the characters are teleported inside, as well as that this level is an auto-scroller, meaning we can't just head back out in order to clean up our mess after clearing through the train. There's only one way we're going to be able to do this, and that's in one shot. Thankfully there is a plan, and the plan is actually relatively simple. Step 1, bring in 3 players. One is going to be used by an actual human, and the other one's just going to be used as a springboard to make my way on top of this cabin and start killing Ant-Troopers. After getting enough distance, I'm going to go ahead and have that other human enter the door. And if I was lucky, I'd actually be able to kill 12 of the 16 Ant-Troopers up here before being teleported. Now once inside, I'm going to go ahead and have the other human humanely destroy all the hostile Karibas inside, and then I'm going to use this extendo block over here to get back onto the roof and destroy the last set of ants. And if everything went as planned, this level is technically possible. But let's just say I wouldn't recommend taking this one down alone. But because it is possible, we can move on. The only real tricky part from here on out comes from Deepwater Dungeon, as here we have to take down all the Madpoles in this Plessy section. However, compared to some of the other levels we've tackled, this one isn't too bad. From here we can head over to the Great Tower of Bowserland and climb to the top to finally escort Bowser to the afterlife. And with that, we can finally say that yes, it is possible to beat Super Mario 3D World while defeating every enemy. But we aren't anywhere near done yet, as with the 8 normal worlds out of the way, the 4 bonus worlds open up with several more difficult levels. So let's hop right into them. Now that we're in the bonus worlds, the levels are going to get a little more difficult, and this can be seen immediately in the Great Gold Pole, as the timer here is somewhat strict. It can also be seen in the Honeycomb Starway, which features a lot of enemy spam at the end, as well as a bunch of fire piranha plants that are difficult to hit. Now, the next level I wanted to mention is Gargantuan Grotto, and while this isn't the most difficult level, it does have some semantic problems. These are of course the giant spike blocks that can be destroyed with the Mega Mushroom. Now these are a pretty giant problem because this means that the spike blocks and other levels technically should classify as enemies, even if the levels that have them don't have Mega Mushrooms and as such don't have a way to destroy them. Or at least they would, if not for the fact that there actually is a setting to determine whether these blocks are destructible or not, and the setting is actually turned off in the other spike block levels. Now, before I move on, I do want to give a huge thank you to the modding community. Seriously, they've done so much for this challenge, and I really wanted to give a huge thank you to them. That being said, we can bash through the cannonballs at Cosmic Cannon Cluster with some difficulty, and then we're heading off to World Mushroom. This world is actually crucial to this challenge for one bell of a reason, that being the Lucky Bell. Now at first this perfect percussion may seem just as important as the original Super Bell. However, the statue ground pound is what truly makes this power-up necessary. With this new power-up acquired, I decided to head back into the original 8 worlds to wrap up some unfinished business. And the first thing I did was I jumped right into the mystery houses, as I initially ignored them due to the fact that I thought I couldn't get an invincibility leave in them. Well, turns out I was wrong on that front, but at least the World 2 mystery box works as a good warm-up for the new ability. However, I think I'm gonna stick with the Gold Tanuki in order to get through the World 4 mystery box, as it's a lot quicker at turning these swamps into concrete dust. While Gold Tanuki leaves are in these mystery houses, that doesn't mean that these levels are free. Case in point, 6- mystery box. Now this throwdown normally requires tossing baseballs at targets to activate them, which would be fine if not for the 4th room where the target is a red POW to start a chain reaction that ends with the Parabitty Buds requiring the paramedics. Because the Rube Goldberg machines aren't personal enough, it's my job to go down there and fight them like a man. I have this feeling like I forgot something. Oh yeah, I have 10 seconds to defeat them all and to get the green star, which isn't a lot of time if you haven't noticed. The good news is that bringing in 2 extra players helps out a lot. Now in terms of actual strategy, what I found works the best is to choose a player and then pick up another as ammunition. Go ahead and jump over the railing, trying to get as many Parabitty Buds as you can and land on the red POW. Then introduce your ammunition to skydiving without a parachute. After that, jump against the wall and try to clean up the rest of the bugs. And if you're lucky enough, you should be able to switch over to Luigi and grab the green star before time runs out. Yeah, this level is kinda tricky. I'm glad I waited till now to take it down. But with that, we can go ahead and move on. Remember how I said we would come back to the Boulder Blockade is back? Well, why don't we tackle it now? As it's not that hard since we have the Lucky Bell, which grants us the power to send these splorches directly to the afterlife. That being said, after beating the level as well as a few other stragglers, I decided to head back to the bonus worlds, where surprisingly there aren't any other challenges. I mean, all the other levels here are just remakes of other levels. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Oh no. Welcome to How, which considering the fact that I just spent the last half an hour talking about how I literally went out of my way to make sure all the enemies in this game had their free trials of life revoked, might just be where I deserve to be right now. It's finally time to talk about Faster Fort Fire Bros, which is anything but easy. Now to put it simply, this is a remake of Fort Fire Bros, except instead of a level giving us 400 seconds to beat it plus an additional 100 seconds if I grab this timer, it instead gives us a wonderful 30 seconds to beat it plus 11 small 10-second timers, which means I get 140 seconds tops. And while that might not seem like it's that big of a deal, for context, it took me 378 seconds to beat the original level, over twice the max time in this remake. So yeah, this is gonna be hard. It's so hard that it's not even worth it to try. Now, I should note that not everything is exactly the same in this remix. For instance, the lava bubbles at the beginning were just never put in, and this minigame has also been flat out removed, just giving us the green star up on this ledge instead. Even still though, this level is nowhere near possible, especially with just one person, as I still have to make the pipe jump, I have to dismantle the block stepper infantry, and now I have to go out of my way to get timers. I'll be honest, this isn't happening. At least if there's only one player attempting it. The only chance at success here is a simple one. To make a spliced run using the best segments of the level controlling 4 characters individually, and just hoping that I have enough time in the end. Surprisingly, the answer is yes. I was actually able to make it to the end in the task, meaning it is actually theoretically possible. But I'm not done with this level. No. While the challenge was originally done on the Wii U, the Switch version actually features online multiplayer, which I have attempted to use to actually complete this level legit. However, I haven't been able to get a successful attempt. Yet. While I am making this episode of The Games Must Go On now, this level's completion is still a work in progress, with only the knowledge that it is theoretically possible. That being said, I did want to give a huge thank you to Rockruff, Danny Longfellow, and D-Land. They helped out a lot in the multiplayer attempts so far, and I really do appreciate all the time that they've put towards the challenge. And you already know that links to their channels are in the description below, and I highly recommend you check them out. Wait, where was I? Oh yeah! Back to destroying enemies and all their families. While the multiplayer version is a bust so far, we can still move on from Faster Fort Fire Bros because of a task. So let's jump right back in. From here, I have some good news. The rest of the levels in World Flower are quite simple. But then we enter the last world, World Crown, which features a Captain Toad stage where we can actually exterminate the fire piranha plant that attacks us. But come on, that's a small fry to the real challenge here, you know what I'm talking about. It's time for Champions Road. And this level is actually pretty difficult because we can't get a gold Tanuki suit in the last world. But if you remember from World Mushroom, we have another power up for invincibility, that being the Lucky Bell. And this is of course required for this level as we have to defeat these fuzzies without the assistance of this piranha plant. I will also say that the bell came in handy for destroying these piranha creepers as we can ground pound off the side after climbing up. But that's it. With Champions Road completed, it is in fact possible to beat Super Mario 3D World... Wait, hold on a second. I might have missed a level. While Champions Road might be the last level in normal gameplay, this gameplay is anything but normal, and Champions Road is more like a pebble on the side of a road when compared to the true final boss of this run, Mystery House Marathon. Now let's get the biggest problem out of the way first. We don't get a gold Tanuki leaf. And as you might have expected in quick time events with 10 seconds each, being required to ground pound every single typically invincible enemy with the Lucky Bell is not a great solution. Now let's talk about the second problem, the free problem rooms if you will. These rooms include a rotating Peepa room, which got significantly buffed from the original as now there are 3 rows of Peepas instead of just 1. Next is the Ice Skate room, which features 5 walleyes now instead of just free ice skating Goombas. And last but not least, this Bullet Bill room. It wasn't buffed, I just really hate it. The last problem in this level is actually intentional though, as remember, this is Mystery House Marathon. Meaning, well, it's a marathon. While the green stars I just listed were the most difficult, a slip up at any point of the level sends me right back to the beginning. So is it possible? For me, I have to say no. I obviously need multiple players for these problem rooms, so doing it legit is off the table. But I can still task. And from what I have found, if you ground pound these Peepas perfectly and ignore any camera bubbling shenanigans in the ice skating challenge, it is actually possible to splice a run together. But it isn't satisfying though. I mean, the last level of the game forced right into a task. I don't know about you, but I'm getting some real deja vu here, and I don't like it. So you know what? I'm not going to take it. While I might not be able to play online on the Wii U version, I am going to hop right back into the Switch version just so I can prove it's possible, once and for all. If I'm going to tackle this, I'm going to need a few things. First off, I'm going to need the best team of players I can think of, and no one fits that bill like the Faster Fort Fire Bros crew. Next, I'm going to need some real power. I hate to say it, but if I stick with the Lucky Bell, this run is going to stay theoretical forever. I'm going to need gold Tanuki suits. However, under any normal circumstances, it is physically impossible to use the golden Tanuki in this mystery box, simply because it doesn't appear. And you're probably thinking, well, we obviously can't take one from another level, right? And in 99% of scenarios, you would be right. In almost every circumstance of leaving a level, your gold Tanuki suits and leaves will crumble down to their brown varieties. But not in every circumstance, as there is exactly one way to smuggle these leaves, and that's actually by going back to a level with a secret exit like 4-2, and then hiding the leaves in your reserve before going down the orange pipe. Once popping out of a green side, as you can see, your character with the gold Tanuki leaf will revert. But all of my leaves in storage will actually be as shiny as ever, meaning it's finally time to tackle this mystery house. The naive idea here is thinking that now that a small army of great Mario players are trying this level with plenty of invincibility, that this house would crumble like it was made out of popsicle sticks. But if you feel that way, I hate to inform you that this level is still near impossible, as those problem rooms are still pretty difficult, especially the ice skate rink, as we have to do the ice momentum glitch accurately enough to hit the walleyes, but still fast enough to reach the end in time. But were we able to do it? While it was the opposite of a cakewalk, after several hours of attempts, we actually were able to beat the level. And with that, I am happy to say that in the end, yes, it is possible to beat Super Mario 3D World while defeating every single enemy. But with that, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, I'd like to say thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.